All right, here we go. Part two, round two of Rome. And we're looking at the second half of the pieces chart here in this section. So again, if you are in AP, use that pieces chart that you have to complete to your advantage. And for my honors crew, just jot some notes down. Again, we're organizing ancient Rome by our pieces strategy. So last time, just real quickly, we saw the political section where we talked about there's two branches, spelling. The Republic, the Roman Republic, which was the first, I guess, iteration of what Rome was. The Republic had two branches of government, where you had a legislative and executive. In the executive branch, the council shared power, with the Senate more of an advising role to debate the laws, but the councils were basically the ones that ran the show. And of course, the people voted for their senators and councils, so you had that Republic representative democracy strategy. Rome started to get bigger through the Punic Wars with Carthage. You then had a period of political violence, an inability to control the land, so that's going to bring in the empire. We're going to have one council, and the first one was named Augustus, or Octavian was his original name, and he's going to usher in what's known as the Pax Romana, which was a Roman peace for a couple centuries, where they celebrate good times and have incredible growth to the empire until we saw like how massive it was in 117 BCE, or in 117 AD rather, where they controlled so much land. Some innovations: you had military formations, the legions, which allowed for very quick movement to defeat their military opponents. Architectural innovation, arches, domes, they show the potential of mankind to create such structures. That's very much a Greek idea. And then they also developed the recipe for concrete that allows those massive structures like aqueducts. And speaking of aqueducts and environment, we saw the importance of water to the Romans. We'll see that again here at the beginning. And then they were able to control water and therefore nature through the construction of aqueducts, which brought them from reservoirs far away from Rome, but they were able to transport them through the construction of those. So that's kind of where we're at, kind of give you the insight of where things are. So let's look at culture. And there's, again, so much that we could hit with Roman culture, and we'll hit some of it there. So first of all, with religion, the ancient Romans, like back in the days of the monarchy, even before the Republic, you saw a lot of worshiping of just natural spirits, wind, earth, fire, earth, wind, and fire, numerous bands. But in any case, they worship those spirits. But then eventually they're going to adapt the Greek religious figures. So we know like Zeus as the leader of the gods. They're going to adapt those and then rename them, many of them after astronomical names that we know today. So like, names of planets and whatnot. So usually if it's a name of a planet, it's a Roman god. Okay, so like Hermes, the messenger god, is Mercury in Rome. Zeus is Jupiter. Ares is Mars. There's more. Aphrodite is Venus, so goddess of beauty. So there's a lot that kind of cross over that the Romans take. So this is an idea that we call cultural syncretism, which is basically a cultural blending of sorts. So you're going to take Roman like natural features and then combine it with Greek religious figures. So that creates a cultural trait that's new, but we call this syncretism. It's a mixture of two past cultures. So that's something we're going to see a lot as we study world history, as we see when cultures interact, like something new forms, but it's really a mix of two things. Another thing you would see in Roman culture is that the importance of what were the public baths. And this is where people would just go to hang out. Just think of it like the pool in the summer, basically, but it was a public area. A lot of people go not only to relax and chat about what's going on in their daily lives, but also to bathe. So you can imagine kind of the dynamic of that. It shows the fascination with water that Romans had, and it illustrates how much water was key to their day-to-day life. Again, we think about the river valley civilizations, how the rivers brought life, and the importance of those. Certainly this is a different way in Roman culture, but it certainly does show, again, water being the importance. And here's kind of our boys here at the bath. Listen, it's very tricky when you're going to Google search and you're like Roman baths to find an appropriate illustration. Right? A lot of these illustrations, they like to show like real subtle butt cracks, and I'm like, I have no time for that. I don't need that, and you don't either. But we're all dressed appropriately here. So again, it was a social hangout for all classes. Certainly there would be some baths that were more private for the wealthy, but these public baths were there for the peasant folk, if you will. We'll talk about the word plebeian here in a minute, and that's what you see represented here. Obviously, when people want to talk Rome, you want to talk the Colosseum. And what was interesting about Rome is that the culture celebrated violence, maybe even more so than our culture through Hollywood and other cultural creations that we do today. It's much more of a celebrated idea, particularly if that violence resulted in triumph and glory. So you had the construction of this Colosseum that was made to help mollify the masses. I'm going to play the video, kind of animation, to kind of show you again the purpose and what would happen and how it was constructed, blah, blah, blah. And then we'll talk about it in the social part about why the Colosseum was a political strategy as well as an entertainment venue.
The Colosseum, Roman Empire. The Colosseum is located in Rome, Italy. Also known as the Flavian Amphitheatre, it is an oval amphitheatre and the largest ever built. Construction began under Emperor Vespasian around 70 to 72 AD and was completed under his successor and heir, Titus, in 80 AD. Further modifications were made during the Flavian dynasty, so the amphitheatre was named as the Amphitheatrum Flavium, or Flavian Amphitheatre. It stood at 50 metres high and 156 metres wide and was constructed from concrete and sand. Arches and columns framed the structure and strengthened it. It had 80 exits and entrances, 76 of which were used by ordinary citizens. The Colosseum was also covered by a controllable velarium to shade spectators from the sun. Nearby the Colosseum stood the Colossus of Nero, a great bronze statue, later changed to a statue of the sun god, Sol. The arena was made of a wooden floor covered by sand. Around it were the spectators' seats, determined by the citizens' importance, with the best seats reserved for senators. Special boxes were reserved for the emperor. The Colosseum could hold around 70,000 spectators. Under the arena was the Hypogeum, still visible today. This was a series of underground tunnels used to house animals imported from Africa and the Middle East, such as lions, rhinos, and panthers, which could be released through trapdoors. The Hypogeum was also used to release slaves through lifts, and to create different moving scenario or scenery, such as hills, groves, and small lakes. The arena hosted a variety of blood sports as entertainment. The schedule for the day consisted of men hunting dangerous animals and executions of criminals, but the main event would be the gladiatorial combat. Ancient writers wrote about mock sea battles, or Normachiae, before the Hypogeum was developed. It is speculated that hydraulic mechanisms were used to flood the arena rapidly for such naval battles. Gladiatorial combat and public entertainment was shown at the Colosseum all the way until the 6th century AD, when costs became too high to justify it, and public taste had shifted. Over the centuries, it was reused for various purposes, such as a material quarry. Today, it is the symbol of Rome, and one of the most visited archaeological sites all over the world.
So one of the things I find interesting there, just in that video, is it discussed like how people would be seated, where the senators would be at the best spot, and then you go farther and up, and eventually you get to women and plebeians, which again we'll talk about what plebeians are here in a minute. But that's another example of social hierarchy. So we've seen that in really every society we've studied so far, is that we've looked at really in depth, is that you have at some point some sort of system that's developed that reinforces a social class system. And even the Colosseum seating would do that. So when we come back a little bit later, we'll bring back the Colosseum and we'll look at like what or how it was used as a political strategy. Let me show you real quick See, there you go, Roman. You got to be careful with that. Let me see if I can show you today what it looks like inside, because they mentioned how you have the tunnels. Here we go. How you had the tunnels on the inside of the or on the bottom part. So if you go in here, you see how there's these structures here built at the bottom. Those were little holding cells, which it talked about, like they'd hold the animals. I don't know where they got the lift action, but anyway, they would bring their up the animals or slaves or whoever was kept under here, and then there was a wooden floor that was put on top of this, and then all of it was covered with sand and dirt, so to give it kind of the classical look that we might be used to. Here's kind of maybe like an approximation of what that might look like. This is a stage that's been put in, but here we go. The stage over here that's been put in to kind of illustrate like the depth of how low this would go here with these tunnels. So again, if you're ever in Rome, I've never been. I want to go someday. Get over to the Colosseum and see what's up, and then send me a postcard, and I would love it so much. All right, let's talk about econ. Okay, so Silk Road, big story. Okay, Silk Road is where it's at. We talked about with Han China and how the development of that really led to growth of the economy in China, what also leads to the growth in Rome. And we're going to look at that a little bit more in depth here in a minute. But you see the Silk Roads again, these roads of trade that are established to connect India and China to the Middle East and eventually to Greece and Rome as well. And roads made Rome possible. And again, it's not I thought it was kind of clever actually to kind of put it that way, because basically what you have here is these roads that are built allow Rome to trade effectively throughout their empire and beyond. So check this out right here. The road system that existed through the empire, this looks like in about 8300. So it's really substantial. And like a modern interstate system. And you even look today, I think a video I'm going to show you here in a second, of the lasting legacy of these roads. There's still some roads in Europe today that were built on the site of these Roman roads. And I love this graphic right here, this road that exists. It was built by the Romans 2,000 years ago, and then Indiana is struggling, a hot mess. I mean, I feel like we can beat up on Indiana. It's one of my neighbors of, my home state. So I'm just going to, dump on Indiana as much as I can. So, okay, here's kind of what is going on with trade. Rome is buying everything. They're buying what we call finished goods. So that would be anything like, wines, for instance, pottery. Let's see here. Other things, I'm trying to say something else. Maybe textiles, which are like clothes. So things that you have to make or you finish, right, and then sell. But they're also getting non-finished goods, things like silks and timber and jewels that can be used as resources, precious metals, that can be used as resources to construct something new once you get to Rome. And really the conduits for so much of this trade for Rome and what allowed it to be such a successful trading empire is that it's placed right on the Mediterranean Sea, right? So the Mediterranean Sea and Rome's accessibility to the sea let it get over to Spain and Britain easily, over here to the west, North Africa and to Egypt in the south, and then over to Asia Minor in the west, Greece in the west, and then even north a little bit. Into what used to be called Gaul, but is now what we would know as France. So again, Mediterranean Sea is a big deal. Rome wasn't centered here in the middle of Russia, right? Because that accessibility to water was key. So not only coming up with innovations to be able to sail in the water, which we'll cover that a little bit later this unit, but also those connections via roads let it be that economic powerhouse. So we're going to check out this short video on the construction of Roman roads.
Man has always moved along a road. It's just what that road has looked like that has changed over time.
The Romans were master road builders, and some of their routes are followed by the major routes in Europe today.
before the Roman roads,
Going from, say, France to Italy, but going through wooden trackways through forests and this sort of thing.
would be terrifying.
To build an empire is to build a road system. The Romans built the first modern highway system. These roads allow the Romans, a small group of people, to control an entire continent.
The Romans made many different kinds of roads, but primarily it was to facilitate communication and the quick marching of their armies from place to place. They could march their legions anywhere within the empire in 10 days.
The Romans were able to not only move forces along the road system, but they were able to take goods and services that they were capturing and move them back into Rome.
Some of the roads were made of stone, some of them made with gravel. Some of the roads in Britain were even made with iron ore. And Roman roads were very practical, often as straight as possible. The Roman road network in Europe alone covers over 56,000 linear miles. It was so extensive and marked by milestones that you knew where you were at almost any given point because the milestones told you how far it was to the next city. Without the roads, there would have been no Roman Empire. Rome's most lasting legacy in Europe is its network of roads.
It's a bold call, to say that its lasting legacy is this network of roads. And again, like they said, you don't have an empire without a road system. To be really two things: to move your military from place to place quickly, so that they can put down any revolts and keep a strong presence if necessary, but also two, to be able to trade effectively, to move things from place to place. Because here's the thing, if you've conquered a land and you as the governing body are not really good at moving goods into the area, then those people are going to be more liable to say, enough's enough. Let's try to break away and get our own independence. To whereas if they're taken care of through being a part of the Roman Empire, which the vast majority of places definitely were, they're going to be willing to say, all right, you can have our tax money, you can have troops for our military. We'll just kind of hang out here as we succeed and have food and finished goods, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so again, the road system, extremely important, and not only Rome, but several other empires we've looked at. So our last part of our pieces chart is society, and I'm trying to look for a place to put my head. Let's go down here for a while, see where'd I go? Am I still there? Okay, am I back? Ooh, that was scary. I dropped off the face of the earth. Okay, Roman social roles. So at Rome's apex and in the Republic, you really had two social roles. Okay, so we're going back kind of to the beginning of Rome here in the Republic, away from the empire. So first of all, you've got patricians. These were wealthy Roman nobles, the famous families, the people that everyone knew, that had money, that had influence, that had generational wealth. These were the only ones that could hold public office and be senators and other, positions inside of the government. So you really wanted to be a patrician. And then everybody else was a plebeian. This could be a wide range of people. It could be a landowner, someone who had a lot of wealth, merchants. Again, I can't spell. That should say merchant. Farmers, but they could not hold office, at least at the beginning. But as time went on, plebeians began to hold better and better social position to the point that they always had the right to vote, but by 287, and again, men only, right? But by 287 BCE, plebeians had won the right to have and gain political power. So they had the chance to hold office and become a senator, and who knows, maybe even a consul in the Roman government. You also had slavery in the Roman Empire and Republic. In fact, it was estimated that 30% of the Roman population were indeed slaves. But one thing that we kind of have to note here is that our conception of slavery in our nation's history is more or less tied to ethnic factors and racial factors. That is not the case in ancient Rome. This was more of an economic condition and a political position. If, say, you were captured in war, you'd be brought back to Rome, wherever that might be, and then you most likely would be a slave. And sometimes you could be freed and work toward your freedom, but sometimes you wouldn't, depending on kind of the individual situation. Some of the prisoners of war will be brought back to fight in gladiator fights. If you've ever seen the movie Gladiator, you kind of know that story a little bit. You'd also have economic debtors, people who couldn't pay their debts who would become slaves. But like I said, it's not tied to a certain race or culture, and slavery really didn't have that perception until the Atlantic slave trade began much later than this. So inside of a Roman family, you would have, let me move my face back up here, still on social here. Households would be often filled with extended families. So it would not be what we would call the nuclear family, but grandpa would be there, Uncle Bill, Aunt Jane, I don't know what your aunt's name is, but whatever, they would be filled with extended families. But the father, whoever would be the highest father figure, would have absolute control. The phrase is paterfamilias, right? The paternal figure, patriarchy was well in view here. Now, wives had very few legal rights, but they had more than the Greeks. If you remember Athens, like women's rights were like nil in Athens, but in Rome there was a little bit more. They could own property, some limited divorce rights, limited in Rome. But the values that you saw here in the Roman family: thrift, meaning that you don't want to waste anything. You want to use what you have, but don't waste it. Discipline, so making sure that you followed the rules, stayed in line, sacrificed your own individual wants for the good of what Rome needed. And this is where Rome is a little bit different than ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was like individual. Rome had a little bit of national pride and meaning, to where the ancient Greeks didn't have that as much because there was no like united Greek idea. But that was the case in Rome. So some self-sacrifice for the good of your family and the good of the Roman state. So that devotion to family and the republic. So you can kind of make a little bit of a connection here with Confucianism, where we see that in China, where it's kind of that connection and devotion to family. But there was not in China, there really was not the devotion to the empire and to the national state that it was in Rome. So like in this case, like that devotion to family was done as a means to make the country strong and to advance Rome. In China, it was more of a like to protect the stability, not to make China strong, but like this is just the way you should act. So that was like the end. And this devotion to family in Rome was more of a means to an end, to where like, okay, we want the Roman Empire to be strong. Part of the way we do that is instilling this discipline inside of our family. It's a very similar idea, just slightly different. Again, that's a connection that we can make. Now, wealth inequality existed for sure. Most of Rome was very poor. You had people bathing in public baths, and they lived in poor structures that were susceptible to fire. Maybe the best example of that is in, I think, AD 64 when Rome burned. And the emperor at that time, his name was Nero, who is not a good dude, famously was said to have been playing a fiddle on one of the balconies of his palace while Rome burned. So you'll see that in public or in pop culture sometimes, is that all this chaos is happening, and he's just kind of fiddling away and playing a fiddle, and he played while Rome burned, something like that. You might get that illusion sometime. So that's referring to Nero. But you did not see, even though there was great wealth inequality, particularly as the empire went along through history, you did not see revolutions from the inside because there were two things really. One is that the Roman government subsidized or helped pay for the production and distribution of bread, free food. Eventually, it was grain at first, but then it turned into actual bread. So the Roman government made sure to keep everybody hungry or keep everybody fed. I guess it's the opposite of that, right? You didn't want hungry people, because one of the truisms of history is that revolutions happen when people get hungry. You know, people can put up with all the crap that's going on as long as you can feed your family. But when you can't do that, let's go, right? Get your pitchfork, let's get crazy. But that's not the case in Rome because of A, the government subsidizing food, and then also the entertainment that they offered, the gladiator fights, the Colosseum, the gratuitous violence. It was an outlet for the Roman people to kind of take out their frustration of day-to-day life, and that ability to be entertained perhaps distracted them to some of the things, the inequalities that were happening around them. So the Roman government was brilliant in that regard, to kind of look at, to say, okay, we got major problems, but if we do these things, gladiator fights and whatnot, public executions in the Colosseum, yeah, that's exciting. Get the lion out, eat his face, right? I mean, as long as that happened, people were willing to kind of say, okay, you know, my life sucks, but I got this. This is fun, okay? And that kind of kept internal peace for maybe a longer than it could have otherwise. So that's what we're looking at. Again, also, yeah, chariot racing too. That's very exciting. Gladiator fights, both of those happening in Colosseum and other places. All right, so that's it for the pieces chart. Again, Google form to take a short quiz. I'm going to post a couple other readings from Khan Academy if you want a little bit more written background. Of course, if you got your textbook for AP, you can check that out. But I'm going to post those readings. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to post those readings for everybody. So you can check that out and read a little bit more. And there'll be a Google form on the second part of the Rome video. And it won't be that scary if you watched it, but if you didn't, boo. So make sure and go back and look at it before you take the Google form quiz. All right, so this is going to lead us into where we're headed next. And now that we kind of have a background on what the Roman Empire was, now we're going to look at what killed it. What is going to kill the Roman Empire? We're going to look at some other things, other cultures and empires also happening at the same time. But our question that we're going to look at and kind of build an argument for is what killed Rome? And that should be a lot of fun to look at. So, because, stuff. So, that's all I got. I'm going to move my face up here so I can kind of look in the camera. There we go. So, yeah, Unit 1 or Unit 0, Part 1 has been done. Unit 0, Part 2, we're focusing mostly on Rome. So, we'll rock and roll with this question and keep building. So, take that Google form and have a great day. Goodbye. See ya.